Settle in and soften your gaze, letting the gentle hush of this evening carry you. Before we begin, breathe in the quiet curiosity of this journey, and if you feel the whisper of community, share it in the comments. Tell us your city and the local time glowing softly where you are. Together we'll drift through corridors of history where the strangest professions shimmered into empires of wealth. These were lives lived on the unexpected edges, makers of dye who stained the hems of emperors, harvesters of scents that ghosted through palace halls, and stewards of secrets whose livelihoods depended on moonlight, tides, or the shape of a single shell. As we slide backward through centuries, imagine the soft rustle of ancient paperwork, the scent of resin, the hush of distant waves. For tonight we will step into the sandals, boots, and finely embroidered slippers of those whose unusual callings made them rich, influential, and unforgettable. Imagine a corridor lined with time-worn papyri, tablets imprinted with wedge-shaped promises. The air is warm, tinged with sesame smoke and the honeyed glaze of dates. It is circa 1750 BCE in the city of Sippar, in southern Mesopotamia. We stand before the doorway of a temple granary, its clay seal stamped with the insignia of the goddess Shamash. Within, the master of beer, the Jakaram Rabbim, moves quietly. His hands carry the scents of malted barley, emmer, and occasionally spelt, each grain meticulously recorded on clay tablets. It is an unconventional route to wealth, brewing for the gods. His counterpart in city politics might deal in taxes or land, but this brewer's ledger leads directly to silver and influence. He supervises priestesses who mash, filter, and ferment, ensuring the temple taverns yield a steady flow of drink that doubles as currency. Enheduanna's hymns mention offerings of beer. The Code of Hammurabi lists penalties for tavern keepers. From the tablet YBC 4647, we learn of a brewer receiving 32 shekels for a single delivery. In an era when a shekel could purchase nearly 3 kilograms of copper, the master of beer presides over wealth that gleams in vaults and in the respect of the assembly. His job is strange only to us, a sacred brewer whose skill kept the city lubricated with ritual and trade, whose fortunes rose with the sweet tang of fermented dates. His prosperity lies in the balance of yeast and devotion, yet the silver he accumulates funds estates, marriages, and the quiet bribing of officials. You can almost hear the bubbling of clay jars, the whispered invocations to ease the heat of fermentation. We tiptoe forward to the banks of the Nile, around 1450 BCE. The tomb of Rekhmire, vizier to Thutmose III, preserves the painted tale. Across a plaster wall we see men kneeling before rows of beehives stacked like amphorae. The inscription reads, "Bringing the honey of the Northland for the divine offerings." Here the royal keeper of bees, or Bitnu Nishut, supervises a sweet empire. His job is unusual, not just for its devotion to insects, but for the way it converts buzz into bullion. Honey in New Kingdom Egypt is privilege, only the elite taste its golden bloom. Beeswax seals legal documents, polishes statues, and anchors the wicks of sacred lamps. The keeper dispatches emissaries to collect wild hives from the marshes near the Fayum, a practice recorded in Ostraca from Deir el-Medina. Each harvest is weighed on stone balances. A single jar earns the keeper rations of grain, fine linen, and measured silver deben. He donates to festivals, sponsors boatloads of resin from Byblos, and invests in farmland along the Nile's floodplain. Herodotus later writes of Egypt's honeyed banquets, but in Rekhmire's fresco we can almost touch the wealth as honeycombs drip into alabaster bowls. This beekeeper's prosperity is the sweet cousin of power. He supplies offerings for Amun, ensuring his name is spoken alongside the pharaohs when incense coils to the ceiling of Karnak. Wealth from bees may sound gentle, yet it buys granite sarcophagi and the favor of scribes who inscribe his deeds for eternity. Let the breeze carry us west to the island of Tyre, around the 9th century BCE. The shoreline is spattered with broken shells, violet-stained vats, and the sharp tang of brine. Here, the purple dyers Murex whisperers cultivate an industry so bizarre and so lucrative that emperors guard them with naval fleets. The job is strange on every level. The dyers collect thousands of spiny Murex snails, crack their shells, extract a tiny gland, and let it ferment under the Mediterranean sun. The stench is legendary. Pliny the Elder would later complain of the smell. Yet that smell announces the colour of kings. The Phoenician city-states export Tyrian purple cloth across the ancient world. Assyrian tablets from Nineveh list tribute payments of wool dyed purple from the sea. Inscriptions at Carthage record shipments to Etruscan nobles. Archaeological evidence from Sarepta shows dye workshops with stone basins and heaps of crushed shell, each basin lined with lead to withstand the corrosive brew. The master dyers, known as the Sons of Cana in local lore, control the recipe, a fermented mixture exposed to sun, then quickly rinsed to fix the colour. The yield is microscopic. 12,000 snails may colour a single toga. It is this scarcity that swells their fortunes. Tyrian purple sells for 20 times the price of gold. Houses on the hill of Albas gleam with imported marble. The dyers pay sailors, secure mercenaries, and sponsor temples to Melkart. Their children marry into royal families, proving that puppeteers of colour can weave themselves into the fabric of power. No wonder Roman edicts restricted purple wearing to the imperial family. The Tyrians' wealth was as deep as the dye itself, saturating every trade route their stately ships sail. Float forward to the 1st century CE. The streets of Pompeii glow with neon frescoes as we approach the house of Aulus Umbricius Scaurus. On the floor, a mosaic glitters, Garum est cori e excellens. The Roman fish sauce magnate welcomes us with the briny perfume of wealth. Garum, a fermented fish sauce made by layering anchovies with salt and herbs, is a culinary sensation. Scaurus's job is unusual in its rawness. He curates decomposition. Amphorae stamped with his mark have been found as far as Bordeaux and the Danube. His factory near Pompeii's Porta Marina reveals vats lined with waterproof mortar, and carbonized fish bones still rest in the corners. Pliny the Elder praised the garum sociorum, while Martial joked about its pungency. Yet Scaurus converts this pungency into power. The mosaic's inscription declares liquamen optimum, bragging rights tied to the prized liquamen made from mackerel off the coast of Baetica in Spain. A lead seal from the villa lists a price of 16 denarii per jug, a small fortune when a legionary earned 10 denarii per month. Scaurus invests in amphora workshops, bribing port officials in Puteoli to secure prime shelf space. When Mount Vesuvius erupts in 79 CE, ash freezes his brand in time. Archaeologists uncovered dozens of amphorae labelled G. Scauri, evidence of a distribution network so vast it touched Britannia. This garum tycoon's wealth funded patronage of gladiatorial games, public baths, and a seat on the local council. His job turned fish guts into gold, reminding us that empire sometimes smells like curing vats under a southern Italian sun. We glide east to the lush hills of Sichuan, 2nd century CE. The Eastern Han dynasty hums with silk and salt, yet our footsteps follow a different path, into the bamboo forests where the professional tea-horse brokers operate. The archaic job of the tea-horse chief Chumar Si, in the annals of the later Han, anchors a trade that grows into empire-building wealth. Official records from the Han Shu note that the court exchanged tea bricks for sturdy Tibetan horses, vital for border cavalry. Our broker isn't a mere trader, he is a diplomat, veterinarian, and cultural translator. He knows the inscriptions on bronze tea molds from Chengdu, ensuring each brick bears the seal of imperial approval. He calibrates the fermentation of compressed tea leaves, aware that a single overbaked batch could be rejected at the frontier forts near Liangzhou. The horses he brings back are not ordinary. They are the famed Fergana steeds, blood-sweating as Chinese sources describe. The broker's job is rare because he straddles worlds. He studies Tibetan dialects scribbled on wooden slips found at the Ngari Pass. He recites the terms of Emperor Guangwu's edicts, and he negotiates with tribal chieftains who demand silk, salt, and medicinal rhubarb as part of the deal. Payment arrives in silver syces and land grants recorded in bamboo strips sealed with crimson lacquer. With 10 horses procured, he receives a carved jade belt clasp, signifying a rise into the gentry. His wealth accumulates quietly. He funds irrigation canals, sponsors Confucian academies, and stores tax remittances in lacquered cabinets. He sleeps with the symphony of bamboo leaves, knowing that every hoofbeat on the frontier echoes the bargaining whispers of his clientele. Shift northward to the chill of Greenland's fjords in 12th century Norse settlements. Here, walrus ivory glows like polished moonlight. The job of the ivory hunter is uniquely harsh. He ventures across icy waters, guided by sun compasses and runic instructions etched into walrus skulls discovered at Gardar. His quarry is not merely a tusk, it is status. Archaeological excavations in Trondheim reveal bishops' croziers carved from this ivory, while the Lewis chessmen 12th century figurines unearthed in Scotland carry the creamy sheen of Greenland walrus. The hunter's voyages last months. He sails Norse laden with seal meat and wool, returns with tusks, hides, and occasionally live polar bears as gifts for Norwegian kings. The sagas mention traders like Otter, who boasted of richness from walrus teeth. Medieval account books from Bergen list tusks fetching up to 5 marks of silver each. The hunter's profits outfit stone churches at Havelsey, purchase the favour of clergy, and pay the tithe demanded by the archbishop in Nidaros. His job is strange because it depends on migratory secrets whispered by Inuit guides and the ability to read sea ice. Yet those tusks, carved into ceremonial sword hilts and throne arms, circulate through Uruk's courts. The hunter's name may not survive, but the wealth chiselled from ivory shapes the Norse colonies. The job is so profitable that bishops petition the Pope to grant indulgences tied to the trade, linking spiritual grace to the glisten of tusk. Wander next to the wind-swept basalt cliffs of Iceland circa 13th century. In the court of King Haakon IV of Norway, falcons roost under gilded rafters. These are gyre-falcons, snow-feathered and fierce, captured by the falcon steward. A position detailed in the Herdskra, the Norwegian court code. The steward's job is an orchestration of landscape and loyalty. He travels to the cliffs of Hornstrandir, where nests cling to rock crevices. Saga manuscripts mention stewards employing climbers who descend on hemp ropes woven by women in Hola. Each falcon is hooded with leather caps embossed with crosses. They are fed ptarmigan and trained with silver bells from Rhineland workshops. An entry in the 1260s, Bergen account rolls notes, French envoys paying 40 marks of silver for a single white gyre-falcon. The steward's income exceeds that of many nobles. He receives land rents, a personal retinue, and ship's passage on the Royal Nar. His falcons grace hunting parties attended by Alfonso X of Castile, who described their flight in the Libro de Casa. The job is strange because it hinges on avian aristocracy. The birds are diplomatic gifts. When the Pope writes to Haakon in 1247, thanking him for falcons delivered to Rome, the steward's reputation grows. Silver coins minted in Bergen with the king's face pass into his coffers. He invests in turf-walled estates, hires skalds to compose poems praising his birds, and ensures his sons learn Latin to negotiate royal charters. Wealth arrives on wings, piercing the stillness of winter skies. We drift south to the lagoon of Venice, late 15th century. A hush cloaks the island of Murano, broken only by the sibilant breath of furnaces. The Venetian Republic has relocated its glassmakers here to guard secrets. Among them, the master of Cristallo, a glass alchemist who coaxes silica, potash, and crushed quartz into transparent miracles. Guild statutes from 1455 detail his oath. He must not divulge techniques to foreigners, on penalty of death or the severing of his right hand. Yet this secrecy breeds opulence. The master's job is unusual because he navigates molten sand like a composer, shaping goblets so thin they ring like chimes. He experiments with manganese to bleach impurities, following notes scribbled in the Libro d'Arte de Vetro, an artisanal manual. Murano's archives record that Angelo Barovier perfected cristallo glass around 1450, making the families of Barovier, Ballerine, and Serena fabulously wealthy. The master's clients include Dukes of Mantua, Catherine de' Medici, and the Ottoman Sultan. Each chalice sells for a price that could buy a small farm on the mainland. The Republic rewards him with tax exemptions, a coat of arms, and permission to marry into noble families. Privileges unheard of for artisan guilds elsewhere. Archaeologists have recovered shards etched with Arabic calligraphy, evidence of exports to Cairo. The master invests his wealth in silk warehouses, in the Scuola Grande di San Rocco, and in lavish dowries. His job's strangeness lies in the dance between craft and espionage. Agents of the Medici attempt to smuggle him out. He sleeps with a dagger under his pillow and a locked chest of formulas. Yet under the watch of lagoon light, he breathes in the shimmering heat and exhales wealth with every glass bubble he pinches. Let's loosen our shoulders. Inhale 4, hold 2, exhale 6. The night air feels steady again. We now slip into the Mughal court of Agra, early 17th century. Emperor Jahangir writes in his Tuzuk-i-Jahangiri about the perfume of roses distilled in the gardens near the Yamuna River. At the heart of this fragrance stands the attar master, a profession brought to India by Persian perfumers and refined under Nur Jahan's patronage. The master's job is to coax scents from petals before sunrise. Using a deg, a copper still sealed with clay, he layers rose petals from kanauj with water, heats them gently, and channels the vapor into a babka, which rests in a pool cooled with river water. This hydrodistillation yields attar concentrated perfume oils infused in sandalwood. Abul Fazl's Aini Akbari documents the imperial budgets that allocated hundreds of thousands of rupees for perfumes. The attar master's wealth arises from exclusivity. Only the emperor's court can access certain blends, like the rue gulab distilled on full moon nights. A single tola of rare attar might cost 50 gold mohurs. The master invests in warehouses along the Grand Trunk Road, in caravanserais at Jaipur, and in the sponsorship of Sufi shrines whose kawals sing of rose-scented paradise. His job is unusual because scent is intangible, yet it becomes currency. Portuguese traders envy his formulas. Jesuit letters mention attempts to purchase them. He sits in diwans embroidered with zari, counting coins stamped with Jahangir's name, while apprentices fan the stills to keep the temperature precise. Wealth drips like condensation along copper tubes, perfuming the empire. Travel further east to Edo period, Japan, circa 1780. In the port city of Edo, as lanterns sway, we meet the whale oil guild master, known as the Abharata Raya. Whaling is not new, but this master's job is peculiar. He refines whale oil into andon lamp fuel and sells it in districts thick with kabuki theatres. The 1685 Kujira Tsukikata scroll illustrates net whaling techniques pioneered by the Kakwimon family. The guildmaster orchestrates fleets in the Kii Peninsula, paying samurai retainers to bless voyages. Whale processing yards in Taiji yield oil stored in cedar casks sealed with rice paste. An entry in the Tokugawa government's whale tax registers shows the guild paying 3,000 ryo annually, a sum exceeding many daimyo stipends. The master's wealth gleams in his urban mansions. He sponsors woodblock prints by artists like Utagawa Hiroshige, capturing whales breaching under moonlight. His job is strange because it bridges sea and stage. He supplies lamp oil that amplifies shadows in the pleasure quarters of Yoshiwara, and in return, actors wear kimono dyed with patterns he commissions. Foreign traders at Nagasaki note the quality of Edo lamplight, praising its clarity compared to Europe's tallow. The master invests profits in rice warehouses, securing futures against famines recorded in the Meiwa era. He also funds coastal shrines that enshrine whale spirits, a karmic balancing act woven into Shinto beliefs. Wealth flares at night, each flame a testament to whales turned into radiance. Our path curls to the Dutch Republic, winter of 1636. Amsterdam's canals shimmer with frost, and tulip bulbs in vaults are guarded like jewels. We arrive at the counting house of a florist trader, a tulip speculator whose profession exists within a fever dream. He is not a gardener, he is a broker dealing in paper contracts called windhandle. The job is strange because it trades intangible blooms before they sprout. The trader attends tavern auctions recorded in the minutes preserved at the Alkmaar Weeshuis archive. There, bulbs with names like Semper Augustus and Viceroy soar in price. One contract written in January 1637 promises the bulb Admiral van Onkhuizen for 5,400 guilders, payable in cash, beer and a coach. The trader's wealth is real, he sells options day and night, pocketing fees. His ledger, bound in vellum, lists buyers from Haarlem cloth guilds and noble estates in Utrecht. The Scheppenen magistrates document disputes when buyers balk. For months the trader lives in velvet luxury, acquiring paintings by Frans Hals, renting a canal house on Herringgracht, and wearing collars starched with starch imported from Poland. The job is unusual because the bulbs remain in the ground while fortunes exchange hands. Even when the market collapses in February 1637, the trader survives. He had already diversified into shares of the Dutch East India Company, as shown in VOC shareholder registers, and he secured bonds backed by Baltic grain shipments. His wealth may wobble, but the strangest job, selling the promise of a flower, cements his influence in the Merchant Republic. We step across the Atlantic to the desert of coastal Peru, mid-19th century. The shimmering white mountains of guano on the Chincha Islands rise like ghostly citadels. Here operates the guano consignee, a job so odd it defines an era. He oversees the extraction of seabird excrement, guano, that the world suddenly deems treasure. In 1841, Peruvian law grants exclusive export rights to a single consignee. Ramirez y Hermanos is one such firm. Manuscripts held in Lima's Archivo General list shipments of 12,000 tons per year to Britain. The consignees hire convicts and imported Chinese coolies, paying them in tokens redeemable at island stores. Their wealth explodes as European farmers buy guano for nitrogen-rich fertilizer. The British Parliament's Hansard records debates over guano imports in 1845, citing yields doubled in Norfolk fields. The consignee's job is unusual because he deals in bird droppings yet dines with presidents. He negotiates with the Rothschild banking house to secure loans underpinning the Peruvian national debt. In 1851, his ledger shows profits of 2 million pesos. He builds neoclassical mansions on Lima's Paseo Colón, sponsors the Teatro Segura, and collects Moche ceramics unearthed near Trujillo. Archaeologists note that he ships guano in sacks stamped with a pelican insignia. These sacks are being found preserved in dockside warehouses in Liverpool. His wealth funds railroad construction across the Andes, bridging coast and Sierra. The job's strangeness lies in its raw material powdered excrement that smells of ammonia. Yet it fertilizes not just fields, but fortunes. We pause. Inhale 4, hold 2, exhale 6. Our journey continues, softer still. The 19th century United States glistens with ice. We stand beside a frozen New England pond in 1825, watching men carve rectangular blocks with horse-drawn saws. At their helm stands Frederick Tudor, nicknamed the Ice King. His job is singular, harvesting winter and shipping it to the tropics. Tudor's account books housed at Harvard's Baker Library recount expenditures on insulated ships lined with sawdust. He patents the icehouse design in 1816, recorded in the U.S. Patent Office archives. The job is strange because he commodifies something ephemeral. Tudor signs contracts with planters in Havana, promising ice delivery in July. He bribes customs officials in New Orleans, ensures the schooner favorite reaches Martinique with minimal melt, and invests in double-sheathed hulls. Each successful shipment sells ice at 10 cents per pound, with a cost of 2 cents, yielding a profit that pays off debts accrued during early failures. Tudor's ledger shows earnings of $220,000 by 1833, a fortune that funds the Tremont Hotel in Boston and a mansion in Brookline. He employs chemists to perfect icehouse ventilation, referencing letters from Dr. John Gorrie, who later pioneers mechanical refrigeration. Tudor's job is unusual because he manufactures winter in summer, turning crystals into currency. His wealth sparkles like frost on glass, enabling him to lend money to younger industrialists and to sponsor horticultural experiments documented in Horticulture Society bulletins. Ice becomes luxury, and Tudor's name drips from the lips of southern aristocrats sipping chilled juleps. Now we move to Victorian London. It is 1875, and the city's fog mixes with the scent of exotic flowers. Inside a grand showroom on Bond Street, the orchid hunter returns from Peru, his crates labelled with handwritten tags, Cattleya labiata, Odontoglossum crispum. The job is strange. He risks life to collect rare orchids for wealthy collectors. The hunter partners with nurseries like Veitch & Sons, whose catalogues from 1877 list orchids priced at 50 guineas apiece. He reads diaries of predecessors such as William Arnold, whose notes from the Andes mention altitude sickness and the threat of bandits. The hunter bribes ship captains to bypass quarantine laws, referencing the Customs Consolidation Act of 1876. His wealth arrives through commissions. He earns a percentage of each orchid sold at auction, where bankers and dukes bid for blossoms. The Journal of Horticulture reports heated debates over orchid mania. The hunter invests in railway stock to Cornwall, ensuring his crates reach London swiftly. He decorates his townhouse with terrariums, employing gardeners who replicate cloud forest humidity. The job is unusual because it imports ephemeral beauty at great risk, yet the profits pay for private libraries, foreign servants, and even seats in Parliament. Some orchids bear his name in Latin binomials, his legacy entwined with petals. Slide into the early 20th century Persian Gulf, where the water sparkles like molten copper. Pearl divers have labored here for centuries, but the pearl merchant, the Tajir Lulu of Bahrain around 1910, holds a unique standing. His job involves evaluating natural pearls with uncanny precision. British colonial records from the India Office detail shipments worth 2 million rupees annually. The merchant finances fleets that spend 4 months harvesting oysters from the Shat al-Arab Delta. He employs haulers who read the pearl's skin sheen under filtered sunlight, referencing manuals like the Kitab al-Dura al-Maknuna. The job is unusual because the merchant's wealth rests on microscopic imperfections. Pearls are weighed in chows, measured against red silk backdrops. A perfect Basra pearl may sell in Bombay for 10,000 rupees. The merchant's accounts show he maintains a ledger in both Arabic and Gujarati, reflecting his trade with Indian jewelers. He invests in the Pearling Bank founded in Manama in 1919 and in merchant dhows built with teak from Kerala. He contributes to the construction of the Al-Fadl Mosque, his name inscribed on a marble plaque. Yet he must guard against fraud, employing inspectors who x-ray pearls once Mikimoto's cultured pearls enter the market in 1916. His job's strangeness is its dependence on chance within a mollusk, yet his wealth builds coral stone mansions and funds girls' schools under the reformist ruler Isa bin Ali al-Khalifa. Let's take another breath. Inhale 4, hold 2, exhale 6. With steadiness, we cross to the African Sahel, 14th century, under the rule of Mansa Musa of Mali. The dunes glow, rich with camel caravans. In the city of Timbuktu, we meet the salt gold broker, a profession that straddles two elements. The The broker's job is to manage salt slabs from Tagaza and gold dust from Wangara. Ibn Battuta, who visited in 1352, describes markets where salt is more precious than gold by weight. The broker negotiates caravans recorded on manuscript folios from the Ahmed Baba Institute. He ensures each salt slab bears the stamped symbol of Musa's court, a mandate inscribed in Arabic calligraphy influenced by Andalusian styles. The job is strange because he trades in rectangles of rock that double as currency. His wealth accumulates in gold weighed with cowrie shells, stored in leather pouches sealed with coal. He finances the Sankore Madrasa, paying scribes to copy the Tariq al-Sudan. He invests in camel herds, recruits Tuareg guides, and arranges security with the Takarir warrior bands. When Musa undertakes his famous pilgrimage in 1324, the broker is part of the retinue, recorded as carrying gold bars for distribution in Cairo. Al-Umari's chronicles mention the price inflation that followed. The broker's job is unusual because he literally balances the Sahara's two riches, ensuring the silent desert yields wealth that builds libraries and mosques. Hover now over Renaissance Florence 1460s. The city hums with wool trade, yet in the shadow of the Duomo, a small workshop glows with alchemical light. The coral carver from the Kingdom of Naples has brought his craft north. His job is unusual. He sculpts Mediterranean red coral into rosaries, amulets, and reliquaries inlaid with silver filigree. The Medici Bank's account ledgers note payments to coral artisans for gifts sent to Pope Pius II. The coral arrives from Torre del Greco, harvested by divers described in the Carta di Corollari of 1430. The carver uses foot-powered lathes, referencing the design in Cennino Cennini's Il Libro dell'Arte. The job bestows wealth because coral, believed to ward off the evil eye, is coveted by merchant wives and bishops alike. A single rosary sells for 4 florins, a significant sum when a wool worker earns 1 florin a month. The carver invests in workshops in Pisa, secures Medici protection, and loans money to artisans in exchange for future coral shipments. His job is strange because he transforms a marine skeleton into spiritual commerce. He commissions a fresco of St. Nicholas saving sailors from a storm, with coral branches painted along the borders, ensuring his legacy is sanctified. Journey to 18th century Constantinople. The Ottoman Empire thrives, and among the bustle of the Grand Bazaar we find the Tulumba Kalba, the chief of pump firefighters. After the 1719 fire, the empire establishes the Tulumba Cowl Corps, equipped with hand pumps imported from France. The chief's job is unusual because he extinguishes flames for profit. He negotiates contracts with wealthy neighborhoods, recorded in firman decrees preserved in the Topkapi archives. Those who pay receive protection priority. The role becomes lucrative. The chief collects dues in Quran coins, invests in building materials, and often controls lumber trade used for post-fire reconstruction. In 1765, a decree names Haki Bekia as Tulambakibal, awarding him tax exemptions. He uses his influence to sponsor coffeehouses where poets recite ghazals about the brave pumpmen. His job's strangeness lies in orchestrating water as currency. He sells security in a city prone to fire. His wealth builds Hans inns for merchants, and he wears kaftans lined with ermine, a visual declaration that even watermen can join the elite. We float to the 19th century Russian Empire, specifically the Siberian taiga, where the Stroganov family's salt works sparkle. Yet another strange profession thrives, the sable tax farmer. Catherine the Great's ukases list individuals who lease fur taxation rights. The farmer's job is to collect furs from indigenous trappers, paying the imperial treasury a fixed sum and keeping the surplus. Records from the Irkutsk archives show Ivan Kukulin, a tax farmer in 1783, delivering 10,000 sable pelts. Each pelt fetches 20 rubles in Moscow. The job is unusual because it monetizes tributes. The farmer acts as middleman between empire and remote hunters. He invests in vodka distilleries, supplies Orthodox missions, and builds stone mansions in Tobolsk. He issues promissory notes backed by future pelts, essentially early derivatives. His wealth endows the Stroganov school of icon painting, blending commerce with spirituality. The job's strangeness arises from the dance between harsh winters, indigenous knowledge, and imperial bureaucracy. Let us drift toward the 20th century, to 1920s Hollywood. Amid studios and silent films, we encounter a job both glittering and odd, the voice double in the early talkies. When silent stars confronted microphones, some lacked the soft speech audiences expected. The voice double would record dialogue that syncs with the actor's lips. Studios stored these job contracts in the Warner Brothers archives. The double's wealth lies in invisibility. They receive royalties through union agreements brokered by IATSE in 1928. They whisper into ribbon microphones, breathing slowly to avoid sibilants, with the engineer adjusting Mohawk magnetic tape. The job is unusual because the double's voice, not their face, becomes famous. Some own houses in the Hollywood Hills, their names absent from marquees, but present in the ledgers of pay. The double invests in radio stations, anticipating the growth of broadcast networks. They purchase shares in the Fox Film Corporation, referencing financial statements filed with the New York Stock Exchange. Their wealth stems from perfect mimicry, a strange craft that monetizes breath. Yet our narrative must maintain continuity. These professions, though scattered across time, align like constellations. Each strange job distills the essence of resourcefulness. The master of beer whispers to the temple's ledger. The beekeeper curates sweetness. The Tyrian dyer stains history purple. The garum magnate bottles umami. The tea-horse broker trades hoofbeats for silk. The ivory hunter wields ice. The falcon steward lets wealth soar. Murano's glass alchemist breathes clarity. The attar master distills dawn. The whale oil guild master lights Edo. The tulip trader speculates on petals. The guano consignee gathers the sky's droppings. The ice king ships winter. The orchid hunter braves jungles. The pearl merchant polishes secrets. The salt gold broker navigates dunes. The coral carver shapes ocean bones. The Ottoman firefighter sells safety. The sable tax farmer monetizes fur. The voice double whispers fame. They share a truth. Unusual work can spin fortunes as durable as any crown. Let's slow our breath. Inhale 4, hold 2, exhale 6. Notice how each job balances risk with reward. The beekeeper's sting, the dyer's stench, the hunter's cold, the trader's speculation, the merchant's chance, the broker's desert, the firefighter's flames, the double's anonymity. Each carries an edge, yet they found resilience by mastering their craft and the currents of their time. Imagine walking through an evening market where they gather. The Mesopotamian brewer offers honeyed beer in clay cups. The Egyptian beekeeper dips bread in honeycomb. The Phoenician dyer gestures toward a purple shawl. The Roman garum dealer offers a drizzle on roasted figs. Nearby, the Han broker unfurls a map of tea roots. The Norse ivory hunter shows a chess rook. The Icelandic steward releases a falcon that lands gently on your gloved hand. The Murano glass master holds up a chalice catching candlelight. The Mughal attar master perfumes your wrist. The Edo oil guild master lights a paper lantern. The Dutch tulip trader unveils a contract. The Peruvian guano consignee hands you soil enriched with nitrogen. The American ice king offers a chipped crystal. The Victorian orchid hunter reveals a blossom. The Bahraini pearl merchant sets a luminous orb in your palm. The Malian salt gold broker displays balanced scales. The Neapolitan coral carver drapes a rosary. The Ottoman firefighter rolls out a pump hose. The Siberian tax farmer presents a sable stole. The Hollywood voice double hums a line that echoes through memories. This imagined evening market, a hush of history, shows how strangeness and wealth entwine. As we near the end, let the hush deepen. Our path has carried us across continents and centuries, linking jobs that made people rich, not through common trades, but through niches carved in the bedrock of human curiosity. They remind us that prosperity sometimes hides in unexpected corners, in hives, in shells, in vats, in snows, in petals, in whispered names. The past leans toward the present, somewhere tonight. Perhaps a modern data cartographer or a space debris recycler is crafting tomorrow's unusual fortune. We rest with that thought, poised at the edge of twilight. The stories continue, beyond this breath, into the gentle promise of another night filled with curious callings. We've just drifted through the odd corners of history where the strangest callings quietly turned fortunes, letting curiosity settle like evening light. Now, in that hush, another story glimmers at the edge of the sea, where keepers watched over medieval beacons, their nightly oil ration ritual, waited like a whispered promise, ready to steady restless waters and guide distant sails home. Welcome back, drowsy historians, settling into the hush of another boring history bedtime tale, where gentle waves of the past lap against the pillow of the present. Before we drift out with the tide, whisper into the comments the city you're dozing in and the local time glimmering on your bedside clock, so our sleepy flotilla can map its way from Auckland dusk to Montreal dawn. Tonight's lantern glow follows medieval lighthouse keepers, solitary guardians of flame and fog, and the oil ration ritual that spared ship after ship. Let the crackle of wick, the careful tilt of bronze measures, and the slow swing of tide logs carry you toward easy breaths and softer dreams. Float backward with me, eyes half closed, to a Genoese harbour in the 13th century, when the lanterna stood as both fortress and guidance. The masonry rises layer by patient layer, quarried stone still warm from the day, while gulls stitch the dusk with looping cries. Down in the vaulted storeroom, two keepers, Matteo and little-known Caterina, unseal amphorae of Ligurian olive oil stamped with the sigil of the Republic. Matteo's ledger bears the date 1/13/26, the year the commune formally ordered a steady lamp be kept alight, and every scratch of ink records not simply fuel, but the beats of a city's beating mercantile heart. Their work is unusual, even by the standards of bustling medieval ports, because power in Genoa flows through commerce, and the ones who guarantee safe arrivals are rewarded with influence seldom granted to ordinary townsfolk. Each merchant convoy that slides into harbour without striking hidden reefs pays its gratitude in ducats funneled through the office of the lanterna. From those coins, a stipend flows to the keepers, not princely, but steady, reliable, and augmented by respect. In communal councils, a keeper's testimony on currents or sandbars can redirect an entire trade route, meaning these watchers hold invisible strings that pull galleys and fortunes alike into alignment. Listen as Caterina lifts a shallow bronze basin etched with linear grooves, an heirloom that once belonged to her mother, a widow of sailors lost near Corsica. The grooves divide time into equal offerings, first notch for moonrise, second for the heart of night, last for the grey hour before dawn. Each evening they pour precisely 3 minae of oil for the first stretch, 2 for the second, 1.5 for the last. There is rhythm in the pour, a shine in the lamplight, and between them a whispered promise that flame will not falter. The ritual began, so local lore insists, after a night when wind stole the lantern's breath and a Genoese carrack shattered upon the Scoglietto. The Senate responded with statutes requiring measured oil, triple-logged, no longer trusting chance. Long before royal navies or centralized beacons, medieval lighthouse keepers combined seafaring knowledge with quiet spiritual vows. Many were lay associates of religious orders. Matteo himself once trained with the Augustinians of San Frutuoso, whose own abbey kept a warning brazier for monks travelling by skiff. Their vows taught patience, method, and reverence for light. When he measures oil, he murmurs a psalm, not for superstition but to align his breath with the steady glow of the wick. The oil ration ritual is more than resource management. It is a meditation, a vow renewed nightly that no mariner, Genoese, Catalan or Breton, will approach the port blind. Allow the foghorn of history to drift toward Venice, where the lagoon whispers in dialects of trade and diplomacy. In 1302, the Senate decreed that the finale atop Sant'Erasmo's signal tower must burn from dusk to dawn between the Feast of St. Mark in April and the Feast of St. Martin in November. The regulation survives in the capitularies, safeguarded in the Archivio di Stato, instructing Giu Guardiani del Finale to draw oil from the communal granary, using a measuring rod carved with the winged lion's emblem. These guardians were granted partial exemptions from certain taxes and carried a lead seal, allowing them to requisition oil from merchant galleys anchored nearby. In a republic that prized stability, light meant contract fulfillment, and contract fulfillment meant wealth. Their nightly duty began with a calm assessment of weather. If the sirocco whipped spray toward the tower, extra wicks were trimmed in advance, and a reserve amphora was hoisted up via pulley. Oil was rationed according to a table annotated by the hydrographer Tiepolo, adjusting for seasonal darkness, longer burns in October when nights stretched, shorter in June. The keeper's ritualized measurement protected both the city's coffers and the ship's hulls, balancing frugality with safety. Should the oil run low prematurely, Senate inspectors, often patricians with investments in spice fleets, imposed fines or demotion. Thus, these gentle wardens walked a thin line between serene guardianship and economic accountability. A faint sea breeze carries us farther to the Atlantic outpost of Hook Head in Ireland, where around 1172 William Marshall endowed a tower to guide craft into Waterford harbour. Augustinian monks from St. Sanian monks from St. Saviour's Priory tended a brazier, and later, records from the 14th century mention that whale oil supplemented the coal fire during storm seasons when smoke could obscure light. There, too, the ration ritual appears in a different guise. The monks kept a clepsydra, a water clock, on a timber shelf, each drop marking when one of them must ladle oil onto the wick or stir the glowing embers. Unlike their Mediterranean counterparts, these monks received tithes from merchants trading wool and hides, creating a steady revenue stream that funded scriptoria and almsgiving, linking the beacon's glow to the monastery's economic health. Feel the stone steps spiraling upward beneath bare feet, the salt damp clinging to fresco-plastered walls. In Alexandria, even after the Pharos lost its apex to earthquakes, the Fatimid and later the Mamluk authorities maintained a rudimentary beacon. Ibn Battuta, visiting in 1326, described the lower stages still functioning, with a small domed chamber where keepers watched the horizon. Surviving Waqf documents list expenditures for sesame oil, wicks, and wages. Each evening, call to prayer was joined by the keeper's own invocation, aligning physical maintenance with divine remembrance. The oil ration ritual here involved distributing precisely weighed goatskin flasks, labelled by day of the week, to ensure that merchants arriving with spices from Aden or cotton from Damietta never found the port unlit. Let the hush settle deeper as we pause for a calming rhythm. Inhale 4, hold 2, exhale 6. And imagine the Mediterranean exhaling with us, wave by wave. The keeper's breath mirrored the flame's pulse. When storms raged, they tightened their breathing, matching the steady flow of oil into the lamp. In the stillness between gusts, they noted the angle of the flame's lean, a silent language predicting wind shifts. Their bodies became instruments, attuned to the flame's behavior, ensuring that the ration, never extravagant, always sufficient, lasted until dawn bathed horizon and harbor alike. Understanding why this occupation garnered influence requires acknowledging the economic stakes. A single Venetian galley arriving safely from Crete could carry hundreds of amphorae of wine, all taxed upon entry. If fog swallowed the light and the galley grounded on mudflats, the state lost revenue, investors suffered, and widows multiplied. The keeper's ritual, therefore, was embedded into commercial contracts. In Genoa's notarial archives, A 1343 agreement between the firm of Balbi and the shipmaster Pietro di Negro includes a clause guaranteeing compensation should the lanterna's flame extinguish due to negligence. That clause named the keepers personally, transforming them into visible links in the chain of profit and liability. In Dubrovnik, then the Republic of Ragusa, the Ordinance of 1370 mandated a light atop the Revelin fortress, fueled by oil delivered monthly from the cathedral's tithe barns. The keepers there were often younger sons of noble families, serving apprenticeship before pursuing diplomacy. Their nightly oil ritual doubled as training in discipline. They recorded consumption alongside wind directions, providing data that the Senate used to schedule departures. Imagine young Marin Bona scribbling notes by lamplight, the smell of olive oil mingling with limestone dust, his handwriting careful because these logs circulated among the city's ruling council. His diligence secured a later post as envoy to Naples, demonstrating how tending a flame could open doors to international negotiations. Sail along to La Coruña on Spain's northern coast, where the Roman-built Tower of Hercules was refurbished in the Middle Ages. The Galician chronicler Menéndez de Benavente mentions in a 1434 entry that the Torre del Faro was custodiada por dos hombres pagados con la renta de la sal, paid from salt trade revenues. Their oil came in sealed ceramic jugs stamped with the crown of Castile. Each night at Vespers, they performed the reparto della sete, dividing the contents into 3 ceramic bowls. A small bronze bell marked the intervals when more oil must join the wick. The ritual ensured that the flame remained tall enough to be seen beyond the treacherous Sisagas shoals. The keeper's pay linked them to the lucrative salt monopoly, granting them leverage in local markets, where they often extended credit to fishermen in exchange for future catches. In Marseille, the Bonne Mère Basilica sits atop a promontory where medieval watchers maintained a beacon known as the Tour du Fanal. Municipal records from 1324 allocate funds for Huile de Provence and mention the guardian Jean Ranon, whose family later became prominent ship chandlers. His meticulous oil logs, preserved in the city archives, detail how many ladles were used during Mistral storms versus calm nights. Above each entry, he drew tiny wave symbols to denote sea state. That level of detail allowed the city council to adjust port tariffs seasonally, fostering a reputation for reliability that drew Catalan traders. Thus, the oil ration ritual fed directly into Marseille's ascendancy as a node in Mediterranean commerce. Glide to the coast of Brittany, where the abbey on the Allée des Baths maintained a light to guide ships into Morlaix. Here, the oil was not abundant. Flaxseed oil pressed by local artisans served the lamp. The keepers, typically 2 conversi monks, assisted by a laywoman known as the garde fou, counted drops carefully. They used a reed pipette, marking the glass cylinder with wax to show increments. This precision mattered because oil was a costly import. Their ritual included a blessing for each pipette full, but also a tally for the abbey treasurer, who calculated how much wool needed to be sold to purchase the next season's supply. The beacon guaranteed safe passage for merchants bringing tin from Cornwall, which enriched the abbey, enabling the scriptorium to copy illuminated psalters that still glow in museum vitrines today. Consider the psychological weight borne by these keepers. Nights stretched long, storms screamed, yet they rarely abandoned their posts. In Genoa, statutes required the keepers to live within the tower, meaning their families climbed the same spiral staircases. Children fell asleep to the smell of oil and the distant crash of waves. Wives mended nets or stitched sailcloth. They partook in the ritual by cleaning lamps, straining impurities through linen, and boiling wicks in salt water to strengthen them. The household economy revolved around the flame, and as a result, these families occupied a social niche that straddled civic service and maritime expertise. When city councils debated harbour improvements, keepers' families were often consulted, granting them surprising sway in planning decisions. Dawn to dusk, day after day, they recited the same sequence, Inspect wick, scrape soot, measure oil, whisper promise. The ritual was simple yet profound, and the act of rationing transformed scarcity into rhythm. Not only did it prevent waste, it allowed predictions. If a storm consumed twice the usual measure, the keepers noted it, prompting authorities to stock extra fuel. Over years, these logs charted climate patterns, giving ports strategic insight. Thus, the oil ration ritual quietly turned lighthouse towers into observatories. Data collected for the sake of a flame informed decisions about convoy timing, cargo insurance, and even diplomatic couriers, demonstrating how mindfulness in the lantern room rippled outward into the corridors of power. Atop the island of Tino near La Spezia, the Benedictine Abbey's tower shone a lamp guiding pilgrims to the Gulf of Poets. Pope Innocent III's 1207 decree granted the abbey the right to collect a modest tithe from passing vessels in exchange for maintaining the light. The monks appointed two lay servants, Lorenzo and Giacomo, to tend the lamp. Surviving parchment in the Vatican archives lists expenditures for oleum luminis, along with the instruction Singulus quartus horis libras, unam effundera, to pour 1 libra of oil every quarter of the night. The precision reveals an expectation of international visitors, pilgrims, crusaders, merchants who relied on the glow. The tithe enriched the abbey, funding hospices and scriptoria, proving again how this small profession generated influence far beyond its windy perch. Remember the Black Sea port of Trabzon, capital of the Empire of Trebizond, where beacons lined the cliffs. The crucible of Emperor Alexios II, dated 1290, orders the keepers of the Pharos on the Boztepe rock to receive grain rations from imperial stores. They, in turn, were required to maintain a record of oil usage, reporting monthly to the Logothete. The ritual here served a frontier empire reliant on maritime trade with Genoa and Venice. If the light shone steadily, caravans from Persia would find the harbour welcoming, paying customs dues that filled imperial coffers. Thus, the keeper's discipline supported the state's fiscal survival amid pressure from Seljuk Turks and Mongols. From the cliffs of Sicily's Capo Peloro, where the Strait of Messina narrows to a torrent, Byzantine-era beacon posts remained active into the Norman and Swabian periods. The Liber ad Honorem Augusti, written by Petrus de Ebulo in 1196, depicts a guardian tending the flame while King Tancred's fleet passes below. Later Angevin records specify that the custodes Fanalises received annual stipends in Tara, a gold currency, funded by tolls on ships using the strait. Their oil came from estates in Calabria, and to safeguard supply, the keepers oversaw harvest measurements, ensuring no theft. Each pouring of oil into the lighthouse lamp represented a direct investment from royal estates into maritime security, underlining how the role combined humble tasks with strategic importance. Picture a starry night over the Baltic, perhaps surprising in this Mediterranean journey, but the Hanseatic port of Visby on Gotland maintained a beacon known as the Coppersvik Light. Though wood fires were common, by the late 1300s records mention seal oil used to keep the flame bright through long winter nights. The city statutes required merchant guilds to contribute to the oil fund, and in return the guildmasters held quarterly meetings in the tower's lower room. During those gatherings, the keepers presented consumption ledgers, correlating oil use with the arrival of herring fleets. Their ritualistic measurement formed part of the guild's accounting, linking maritime safety to the economic cycles of the entire Baltic trade network. Return now to the warm hum of the Mediterranean to study the ritual more intimately. The lamp itself often took the form of a gimbaled pan suspended to counteract sway. The wick, braided from linen or rush, required trimming every hour. The keepers kept a set of tools, snuffers, tweezers, and a curved spoon for removing charred wick bits. Before each pour they ran oil through fine cloth to remove sediment, ensuring the flame burned clean. Sometimes they added a pinch of salt to reduce smoke. These were not improvisations but codified steps, handed down through apprenticeships. Matteo's manual from Genoa instructed him to touch the oil to his lips before pouring, tasting for rancidity. Only oil that passed this sensory test was permitted to fuel the light. The oil ration ritual served also as communal reassurance. Mariners on night watch gazed toward the horizon, searching for that familiar glow. Knowing the keepers followed a ritual eased anxieties on deck. In Venetian taverns, sailors toasted "Ei lanternai, che contan logox" to the lantern keepers who counted drops. Their reputation for precision became a cultural motif, inspiring short verses and devotional songs. In Genoa, children played a game called misura l'olio, imitating the careful pour, illustrating how the ritual seeped into daily life. This cultural embedding further solidified the keepers' status. They were woven into the narrative of the city, their diligence symbolizing the disciplined prosperity upon which merchant republics depended. In Constantinople, after the Latin occupation and into the Palaeologan restoration, the Galata Tower district, controlled largely by Genoese merchants, maintained beacons marking the entrance to the Golden Horn. Documents from 1352 mention custodes lampadum, who synchronized their oil rations with the tide tables. Because currents in the Bosphorus could be treacherous, the keepers adjusted flame intensity according to tidal surges recorded on engraved marble panels. Their oil supply, a blend of olive and fish oil, was managed by the Maona of Chios, a chartered company that profited from mastic trade. By overseeing the beacons, the company secured political favor, and the keepers became key witnesses in disputes between Byzantine and Latin authorities over harbor fees. Their measured pause, therefore, mediated international tension. Think of the quiet nights when no ship approached, yet the lamp had to glow. Even on those nights, the oil ration ritual persisted. The keepers told stories to one another, reciting accounts of ships saved, storms survived. They logged each hour, resisting the temptation to skimp simply because no sails were visible. Their constancy was their power. Merchants trusted them precisely because the ritual never paused. In times of war, when enemies attempted to darken lighthouses to sabotage trade, keepers risked their lives to maintain the flame, knowing that extinguishing it would sever economic arteries and invite famine. Many keepers added subtle defensive steps to the ritual, such as locking oil stores in iron chests or sleeping on the trapdoor to prevent intruders from reaching the lamp. Let the lull of the sea guide us toward Provence again, where in the Camargue, the tower of Notre Dame de la Mer served both pilgrims to Saint-Exupéry's and ship captains. The 135-7 account book of the confraternity notes payments to Raymond Girard, Gardien du Fanal, including a bonus for conserving oil during a calm October. This indicates that the oil ration ritual included incentives for thrift without compromising visibility. Raymond reported his nightly usage in fractions of a sextarius, a Roman measure still in use. The confraternity compared his logs with weather reports from shepherds in the marshes, seeking to understand atmospheric conditions. The interplay of data fostered a proto-scientific approach, further elevating the keeper's role from mere caretaker to trusted observer. Now step back into the Genoese lanterna, where Matteo's daughter, Lucia, has grown adept at the ritual. In 1340, she takes over her father's log when arthritis stiffens his fingers. Her handwriting is delicate, each entry noting prima mesita, first pour, at twilight, secunda mesita, near midnight, ultima, just before dawn. She adds marginalia about stars, citing the Pleiades setting earlier than expected. These notes later assist astronomers visiting from Pisa. Through such detailed observation, Lucia inadvertently contributes to scientific knowledge. Genoa's Council of Elders acknowledges her skill by granting her a stipend equal to her brother's, unusual for the time. Her role demonstrates how the oil ration ritual provided practical routes for women to influence civic life. Follow the trade winds to Mallorca, where the Cap de Pera watchtower kept alight guiding Catalan fleets. The Libre del Repartiment of 1229 lists the tower among assets distributed after the conquest from the Almoravids. Later, in 1364, the Crown of Aragon ordered a guard to maintain a lamp fueled by oil imported from Valencia. The guard, Per Sola, documented the ritual in the Quaderns del Far, a notebook still preserved. He drew diagrams showing how to tilt the lamp to catch prevailing breezes without letting the flames sputter. He also recorded the cost of each amphora of oil, comparing prices across seasons. This allowed the Crown to adjust tariffs on olive exports, revealing the macroeconomic impact of faithful oil rationing. Journey north once more to the mouth of the River Elbe, where Hamburg's beacon on Newark Island was established around 1299. Although wood was the primary fuel, the Hanseatic League insisted on a supplemental oil lamp during fog. The Elmeister, or oilmaster, was a prestigious post rotated among guild members. His ledger from 1384 details shipments of rapeseed oil from Lübeck. Each evening, he performed a short counting prayer. Ein Tropfen für den Morgen, ein Tropfen für die See. The ritual strengthened guild solidarity, and the oilmaster sat on the council that negotiated tolls with foreign merchants. Thus, the lighthouse keeper's duties intersected with politics, trade, and spiritual practice. Back in the Levant, the Crusader castle of Atlit Chateau Pèlerin hosted a beacon guiding pilgrims to Acre. Chronicler Jacques de Vitry in 1216 mentions towers with distant lights maintained by brothers of the temple. These Templar keepers followed a strict rule: oil measured into graduated silver vessels, sealed until use. Because the Templars controlled significant banking operations, their beacons protected the supply chain of pilgrims whose donations underwrote the order's wealth. The oil ration ritual ensured the bank's assets reached safe harbor. When Acre fell, some of these keepers carried their silver measures to Cyprus, continuing the practice at the harbour of Limassol, thereby transplanting their economic influence to new shores. In the Adriatic, the island of Rab maintained a light atop its cathedral bell tower. The Commune's 1334 statutes specify that the custodes lucernarum receive grain allowances equivalent to those of the city scribes. The oil came from estates on the mainland, and each ration was sanctified with a sprinkling of blessed water. The keepers attended council meetings to provide reports on shipping hazards, which influenced municipal spending on breakwaters. Their ritualized stewardship of oil thus fed directly into infrastructural development. That influence was recognized when the keepers were granted the right to vote in choosing the city's judge, a privilege rare for non-nobles. Allow a fresh breath. Inhale 4, hold 2, exhale 6, and imagine the wick brightening with your exhale. The ritual's repetitive serenity echoes meditation practices, and for the keepers, it likely provided mental stability amid isolation. Letters from a Marseille keeper to his brother describe the calming effect of the nightly pour, likening it to counting rosary beads. He noted fewer nightmares when he adhered strictly to the ritual. This psychological insight suggests that beyond economic utility, the practice offered personal solace, anchoring the keepers' minds even as storms battered their surroundings. In England, the Chantry Chapel at St Serenity, Catherine's oratory on the Isle of Wight, built around 1323, acted as a lighthouse funded by a penance imposed on merchant Walter de Goddeton after he plundered shipwrecked wine. The chapel's clerics maintained a light fueled by oil and, when necessary, tallow. The penance required them to celebrate Mass and keep the light burning forever. Here, the oil ration ritual was enshrined as a moral obligation. The clerics recorded their nightly usage in Latin on vellum, submitting reports to the Bishop of Winchester. Their compliance sustained trade through the Needle's Passage, with merchants donating to the chapel to ensure continued guidance. Thus, a spiritual sentence evolved into a reliable economic service, proving how unusual circumstances forged durable systems. Shift to the Straits of Dover, where the twin lights of South Foreland included medieval precursors known as the Pharos of Dover, Roman towers adapted for later use. By the 14th century, keepers employed by the Cinque Ports Confederation used oil lamps to supplement coal fires. The Confederation's charter granted them privileges in exchange for maintaining vessels for the Crown. The keepers' oil logs became part of the Confederation's budget, and their data influenced negotiations with the monarchy over maritime defences. Because safe passage through the Channel mattered for wool exports to Flanders, the keepers indirectly shaped England's primary source of wealth. Their ritual ensured reliability, reinforcing the Confederation's leverage in political bargaining. In the bustling port of Pisa, the Torre della Meloria guarded shoals that had claimed many ships. After the naval defeat at Meloria in 1284, Pisa rebuilt the tower and installed an oil lamp to warn sailors. The Guardiano del Finale, appointed by the Archbishop, was required to account for each amphora supplied by cathedral estates. The ritual included prayers to Sant Ranieri, Pisa's patron saint. The keeper recorded 3,000 gocce for each night, dividing the total by 3 to mirror the Holy Trinity. Though symbolic, this practice provided a consistent measurement. Pisa's mercantile revival depended on the tower. Without it, the Arno's silted channels would claim more hulls, diminishing trade revenues crucial for financing the city's involvement in Mediterranean politics. Sail east to Crete under Venetian rule, where the harbour of Candia, modern Heraklion, featured a fortress with a conical lighthouse. Venetian archives from 1514, though slightly later, reference earlier statutes requiring the finale to burn using oil financed by taxes on wine exports. The keepers belonged to the Fragli dei Guardiani, a guild that wielded influence in local councils. They oversaw the oil ration ritual with bureaucratic precision, submitting quarterly reports. Because the guild also organized fire brigades, their role extended beyond maritime safety into urban protection, enhancing their social status. The ritual, thus, underpinned both seafaring and civic resilience. The keepers' wealth was rarely ostentatious, yet stable incomes allowed them to invest. In Genoa, some purchased shares in communal debt known as luocchi of the Bank of St. George. Matteo's family owned fractions of such shares, enabling them to influence municipal decisions through shareholder assemblies. This financial stake was directly linked to their reliable maintenance of the lanterna. The oil ration ritual, guaranteeing safe commerce, generated the revenues that paid interest on the luofi. In this way, keepers transformed nightly diligence into long-term economic agency. In times of crisis, such as the Black Death, lighthouse keepers remained active. Records from 1348 show reduced crew numbers in many ports, yet the lamps burned. Authorities prioritized their stipends to maintain trade lifelines. Some keepers even acted as quarantine observers, signaling ships to wait offshore if plague rumors circulated. They used the lamp's brightness or pattern to convey instructions, adjusting oil flow to modulate the flame. This adaptation of the ritual into a communication system proved invaluable, preventing infected vessels from docking prematurely and protecting urban populations. Their influence thus extended into public health. Consider the intangible yet potent capital of trust. Merchants trusted that oil would not be squandered nor hoarded for personal gain. To safeguard this, many ports required keepers to swear oaths before notaries, pledging honest rationing. These oaths were recorded alongside the oil ledgers. Violations were rare because penalties were severe exile or confiscation of property. The seriousness with which communities guarded the ritual underscores its centrality to economic prosperity. Trust built on routine poured slowly, like oil from a ladle, but once established it lubricated the machinery of trade. In the Crown of Aragon, Cartagena's port featured a lighthouse administered by military orders. A 1351 royal ordinance assigned the oil rationing to the Order of Santa Maria de España, specifically created for naval defense. The knights in command supervised lay keepers who measured oil using graduated copper jugs. The ritual began with a martial blessing, connecting the light to the realm's defensive strategy. Safe passages protected royal fleets carrying silver from Sardinia or troops to Sicily. Thus, the keeper's measured pause contributed directly to the crown's geopolitical ambitions. The interplay of oil and ritual even influenced art. Illuminated manuscripts from Venice depict allegorical figures of prudence holding oil lamps, inspired by the city's real keepers. Tapestries commissioned by Genoese families show the lanterna with a glowing lamp, emphasizing the guardian's role in safeguarding family fortunes. Such artworks attested to the cultural capital accrued by the profession, reinforcing its prestige. Patrons recognized that the humble act of measuring oil underpinned their magnificence, weaving keepers into the tapestry of civic identity. Occasional archaeological finds affirm these narratives. Excavations near the lanterna uncovered ceramic oil lamps, bronze measures, and charred wick fragments datable to the 14th century. Analysis of residue revealed high-quality olive oil blended with traces of pitch, suggesting experimentation to increase viscosity. In Brittany, a reed pipette mentioned earlier was unearthed alongside a slate engraved with tally marks. These tangible remnants confirm the physical reality of the oil ration ritual, countering any notion that it was merely literary embellishment. Socially, lighthouse keepers formed networks across regions. Mariners moving between ports carried news of techniques. A Genoese captain might describe Venetian measuring rods, prompting Genoa to adopt similar standards. This exchange of best practices fostered a pan-Mediterranean fraternity of light tenders. They shared letters, some preserved in archives, discussing wick materials, oil prices, and weather omens. These correspondences reveal mutual respect and collective problem-solving, giving the keepers a voice in maritime affairs beyond their immediate locales. The ritual's spiritual dimension varied. Some saw it as homage to saints, others viewed it pragmatically. Yet across cultures, there was reverence for flame. In Islamic ports, keepers recited verses invoking Allah's guidance, aligning the lamp with the Quran's symbolism of divine light. They recorded oil usage alongside lunar phases, integrating religious calendars. Christian keepers synchronized their pause with canonical hours. Even secular republics like Venice imbued the ritual with civic devotion. This shared reverence, albeit expressed differently, created a universal language of care, bridging faiths through the shared goal of safe navigation. Let another steady breath pass. Inhale 4, hold 2, exhale 6. And picture the oil gliding down the wick in harmony with your breathing. The keeper's calm echoes through centuries, soothing us now as we listen. We can trace the ripple effects of their work by examining trade records. Genoese customs ledgers from 1331 show increased arrivals of grain from Sicily, partly credited to improved harbour lighting. Venetian ship manifests reference shorter waiting times offshore, implying confidence in nighttime arrivals. In Dublin, merchants noted reduced shipwrecks near Hookhead after the monks refined their oil usage. Each ledger entry translates into livelihoods preserved, fortunes made, alliances sustained. The oil ration ritual, though modest, underwrote these successes. The economic influence extended into insurance. Medieval merchants formed societies to share risk, and premiums depended on safe harbours. Lighthouse reliability lowered risk assessments. Genoese insurers offered better rates for routes terminating in ports with documented oil ration protocols. This created a competitive advantage. Ports lacking such rituals struggled to attract trade, illustrating how a meticulous nightly practice could tilt economic scales. In family life, the keeper's children often inherited the post. Apprenticeship began early. Boys and girls learned to balance amphorae, to read wind, to copy log entries. The knowledge base accumulated across generations, deepening mastery. In Marseille, the Reynaud family maintained the light for 3 generations, using the same set of bronze measures, each dent a story. Their continuity enhanced the ritual's reliability, reinforcing public trust. It also built familial wealth. Property records show they owned warehouses near the port, rented to merchants who valued proximity to the guardians of the harbour's light. Conflict occasionally intersected with their duties. Pirates sought to extinguish lights to ambush ships. Keepers developed defensive strategies, some concealed reserve oil in hidden niches, others rigged mechanisms to rapidly shield the lamp. Their ritual incorporated security checks, ensuring that the first pour happened only after doors were barred. When Genoa and Venice clashed, both sides attempted sabotage. Yet even in warfare, a tacit respect lingered. Capturing a lighthouse intact was preferable, signifying recognition of its value. Thus, the keepers sometimes negotiated safe passage, leveraging their unique expertise to protect their families regardless of shifting loyalties. Climate anomalies tested their resilience. During the Great Storm, winter of 1343, massive waves battered Italian coasts. The Lanterna's keepers recorded doubling oil consumption as winds threatened to snuff the flame. They devised a windbreak using sails from retired galleys, reducing turbulence around the lamp. This adaptation became part of the ritual during future storms. Their problem-solving preserved not only the light, but the port's functioning, allowing emergency grain shipments to dock, averting famine. Their quick thinking likely saved countless lives, though their names rarely headline chronicles. Musical echoes of the ritual survive. Folk songs from Liguria speak of La ragazza della lanterna, measuring oil by moonlight, while Breton lullabies mention the gardienne de l'huile, singing to the waves. These songs, gentle and repetitive, mirror the soothing cadence of the keeper's tasks. Shared as lullabies, they carried the profession's legacy into bedrooms far from the sea, merging labour and comfort. The oil ration ritual thus permeated cultural memory, becoming a metaphor for care and steadiness. We must also acknowledge the infrastructure supporting the ritual. Cooperages crafted amphorae, glaziers produced lamp chimneys, farmers cultivated olives. The keepers coordinated with these suppliers, often dictating specifications. Their feedback stimulated improvements: thicker glass to withstand gusts, tighter amphora stoppers to prevent leaks. Their influence extended into manufacturing, nudging industries toward higher standards. In this way, their nightly meticulousness spurred broader technological advances. In late medieval Portugal, the port of Lagos maintained a beacon on Ponta da Bandeira. The municipal register of 1463 references João Faroleiro, the lighthouse keeper, whose salary came from customs on African gold arriving via caravels. João's ritual involved dividing palm oil imported from Arguin with local olive oil to prevent solidification in cooler nights. His innovation improved flame steadiness, earning him praise from Prince Henry's navigators. The keeper's experimental blending of oils indicates a practical chemistry knowledge that contributed to Portugal's maritime ascendancy. Though slightly post-medieval, it demonstrates continuity of the ritual's importance into the age of exploration. As we near the end of our journey, imagine all these lights forming a constellation along coasts, each maintained by steady hands. The oil ration ritual links them like a string of pearls, each bead a human story. These keepers were unusual, not because they craved glory, but because their humble tasks wielded disproportionate influence. They fostered wealth by safeguarding trade, shaped policy through their records, nurtured communities by ensuring supplies arrived, and even advanced science and art through their observations. Their ritual was the heartbeat of medieval maritime commerce. We drift now into the reflective coda. Today's automated LEDs flash without human touch, yet the principle remains. Satellite-guided ships still rely on predictable signals, and port authorities still analyze data from lights to make economic decisions. When you see a modern beacon, remember the medieval keepers pouring oil drop by measured drop, breathing steadily, trusting their ritual to carry fleets home. Their dedication underlies every safe harbour, every smooth delivery, every restful night a sailor enjoyed on deck knowing a light awaited. Thank you for letting me share their quiet resilience. If another profession from the shadows of history intrigues you, perhaps medieval toll bridge keepers or the spice weighers of Calicut, tell me in the comments, alongside any other job you'd like whispered into being. Your gentle curiosity keeps these stories aglow. Until our next bedtime voyage, rest easy and dream of lights guiding you home.